got people recording. We got some that's live online, and we want everybody to hear this today. And if you hear it, don't let nothing distract you.
Right.
And once he gets started and gets into it, I'm sure he'll have your attention. But I have learned and grown to love this man and his wife.
Yes.
And after I heard his testimony, oh my God. But there's nothing I can add to it. Now, I want him to come tonight, and I want him to have his liberty behind this pulpit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right up front. His testimony will tell you how he's raised. And maybe some things comes across you. It's all will be of God, okay?
Yes.
Amen. But let's say the Lord bless Brother John tonight. The Lord bless Brother John.
Amen.
How's everybody tonight?
Amen. Amen.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
Oh, wow. This is the first time I've ever done this actually on a microphone. I actually gave my testimony numerous times while I was in prison. But anyhow, after telling the pastor about the testimony, I was just giving him some of it, and then he asked me to give it all to him. And so as I went to telling him, I felt the Spirit of God just come over me. And I started just opening it up to him like I had never did before, and just telling him everything that, that God had, I had been through, and I never had really noticed that God was really there all along until the moment that I knew. And so I just, I kind of got it a little bit outlined here, so I'm just going to let the Lord please help me right here, right now, Father. Thank you. In Jesus' name. First of all, I'm a miracle baby to begin with. I was born deformed without no bronchial tubes. I couldn't breathe, and they had to keep me in the hospital till I was 5 months old, and I didn't have no bronchial tubes, so they had to keep me in a tent on a respirator inside the hospital. Well, anyhow, I was finally released out of the hospital and given to my real mother. And at 6 months old, my real mother was addicted to heroin, and she abandoned me in Atlanta, Georgia, in the ghetto, in the dope hole, with a babysitter. And my dad was alcoholic, and he had no idea where I was at. But I had a praying grandmother, and that she loved God, and help me, Lord. And this lady, all this lady knew was my last name, and that they called me Little. And so she went to the Salvation Army after, I think it was 5-6 months, they said, and looking for me all over I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm not from down here, and which is up on the first coast, right when you first come into to the state, so on the east coast. I'm sure all y'all might know where that's at. But anyhow, Atlanta's about 3 hours away, and so anyhow, my grandparents were looking for me, and they had the authorities looking for me. But anyhow, the Salvation Army found me, and I was given to my grandparents, and they adopted me. Well, my dad, he didn't have nothing else to do with my real mom after that. And so my grandmother kept me until my dad had remarried. And then my dad remarried a woman named Linda. And everything was good up until like, I was like 13 years old. Everything was great. I never even knew this woman that raised me wasn't even my real mother. And so one day I used to love to go to my cousin's house, and well, whenever I started going out to my cousin's house, they started teaching me how to huff tooling and huff gas. And we'd stay in the woods for days in, huffing tooling. This is jet fuel. And we'd huff so much that our temples would turn blue. And then I'd leave there and I'd go back home, and then I'd be in, come on, help me, Lord. And then I would go back home, and my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom that adopted me was also a drug addict. And as time transpired, next thing you know, I started becoming doing drugs. Started off at an early age doing pills, stealing the beer out of the refrigerator here and there, and then one day, next thing you know, my dad just started getting real violent, and you know, he used to get real violent and grab me by the hair of the head and sling me. He was a real big man, sling me across the house and beat on me and tell me I was no good. But anyhow, I started stealing the pills out of my mom's bottle out of her pocketbook, and I would start taking the pills just to get the pain away, and then when I got like 15 years old, I decided that I was going to run away, and so I ran away, and I ran into a homeless man named Al Bridges, and he taught me into getting on a box cart, and we would ride box carts from Jacksonville to Louisiana, from Louisiana to New Mexico, and we'd eat out of garbage cans, sleep on the ground. He taught me how to make huts out of cardboard, and so I wound up in juvenile in Louisiana, and one thing I never did forget was my grandmother's phone number. And I always memorize. She made me memorize it by heart because I guess she must have known that one day I was going to need it. And so I told the people there her number, and she came and rescued me out of the juvenile in Louisiana, and took me back. And then my dad came and took me back again. And then by the time I got back to my dad and them, things had gotten really bad then. And he told me, he said, you're either gonna get a job or you're gonna sell drugs for me. And I said, well, I want to go to school. And he said, well, you can go to school, but you're gonna do one thing. He said, you're gonna pay your way around here. So anyhow, I started selling marijuana for my dad, and then he started teaching me how to carry a pistol. And then whenever I was 16 years old, he had me go shoot a man in the face, and over some money. And because I was so scared of my daddy, I did what my daddy told me to do. And anyhow, I was never put in jail because of that, because my dad's reputation was so bad. He went to the man while he was on the respirator and snuck in the hospital and told him and my daddy's brother, told him that they were going to kill him, and so they didn't press charges on him. So anyhow, one day I'd go back out to my cousin's house, and we're out there playing pinball, and I love to play pinball. And next thing you know, my daddy walks into the store and he says, "Come outside." And I was like, "Well, I really don't want to come outside." And he's like, "Well, you got to come outside." And so I went outside, and he said, "I got somebody I want you to meet." And so I said, "Okay." All right, well, who is it? So he walked me to the end of the building, and out steps this guy about this tall, and he had long black hair, and he was kind of dark complected. He said, "This is your brother." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, this is your brother. By the way, Linda's not your mama. This is your half brother, and his name's Robert." And he was a real nice looking guy, and he was real polite to me, and we hugged, and he told me, he said, "Come on, you're gonna go with us." And so I met my brother for the first time, and well, I didn't know it but we went to his house, and my dad left me with him at his apartment, and he was a drug addict also. And one thing I didn't really like about being over there at his house, because he liked snakes, and he had snakes all over his house and stuff, and I don't like snakes. And so we got to know each other pretty much a little bit, and tried to have a relationship, and he would come pick me up and take me and buy me things and stuff like this. And so he went to jail for racketeering, and they gave him 4.5 years in prison. And before he went to prison, my daddy told him, he said, you can't come around our house anymore and see Little John no more. That's what they call him, Little John. And my brother was like, well, that's what you say, but I'm coming to see him anyhow. So anyhow, my brother went to prison, and when he was in prison, he had his girlfriends. He had a bunch of girlfriends and girls that worked for him, and worked for him. Anyhow, they had the girls come out they put him on the outside work crew at the Florida State Prison. And the guard worked there, his name was Whitehead, and they would come and give him money and drugs and sex, and he would let my brother leave the work crew and come to Jacksonville while he's supposed to be out on the side of the road, chain gang. And so my brother would come to Jacksonville. So my grandmother had given me enough money to get me a little camper to live behind my dad's, and because I had to get out of the house from him, because he literally picked me up one day and threw me through the living room wall and tore the whole wall out and took all my stuff and threw it in the front yard and said, you don't have a bedroom anymore. And took the couch and slid it all the way up against it and enlarged the living room. So anyhow, my grandmother gave enough money to put a camper-like trailer behind my dad's house. So one morning I'm laying there, and next thing you know, the door to the trailer, it had 2 doors on the front, no back doors, one on this end and one on that end. And see, all this time I didn't know that God had his hand on my life. I didn't know this. I didn't know. I'm like Timothy in the Bible. I had a grandmother named Lois that stayed on her knees praying for me, and I didn't know this. You know, she had took me to Sunday school and stuff, and but I really didn't get nothing out of it because my mom was just not into it because of just, you know, the abuse and not knowing where I was going to live or whatever. But anyhow, back to the subject. So I'm laying there, and where my bedroom door snatches open, and in comes running my brother, and he's got prison uniform on, and he says, I just escaped from Florida State Prison. I said, what do you mean? He said, I just escaped. He said, I'm not going back. I'm supposed to be on the work crew, and I'm not going back. And I'll be on the news today. And I noticed he had just got a bunch of tattoos on his arms right here, of graveyards and headstones and skulls. And I was like, wow. And I was like, well, whatever. You can't be here when my dad gets here. You can't be on the property when Daddy gets here. No matter what, you can't be on the property when he gets here. Please, don't be here. I don't want to have to go through this. He's like, well, I'll be back. He just went in my closet and started grabbing my clothes, and he changed clothes, and I didn't even get up to look to see who he was with, and he left. So I can't remember everything, all I was doing that day, but I made my way from there to the front, to the trailer where we lived at, and it didn't have no windows in it. Daddy done shut all the windows out. He done shut holes all through the roof, and every time a black person would come on the TV, he'd shoot the TV out. So we never had a TV, we never had a telephone. So I made it to the front up there that morning, and my mama was up there. And I told her, I said, Robert, you ain't gonna believe this, Mama, Robert has escaped from prison. And I told him not, and first thing she said, well, he can't be here when your daddy gets here. Your daddy's on that cocaine and drinking liquor, and he's got his pistols, and he's got Johnny Carter with him, and there's no telling what'll happen if he shows up here. And I said, well, I told him to leave. I hope he don't come back. And so I was just sitting up there with Mom. I don't remember exactly what I was doing that this specific day. And so next thing you know, my dad pulls up, and he said he ain't in his car. He's in his friend Johnny Carter's dad's truck. And so they get out, and the first thing I noticed, my dad had a bottle of Lord Calvert's, a tall quart bottle of Lord Calvert's. And it was in the wintertime, and he had on a windbreaker. And I looked out the windows, I seen that, and he would come up on the little porch we had, and he'd come in the house, and he had his friend with him, and they came in, and he sat down, he set the liquor down, and he sat there and he started rolling a joint, and he started talking to Mom about something, and next thing you know, I can't, it's like, today it's almost like a dream to me, and it happened so fast. But in comes my brother. It's like I was one moment I'm there now, in reality now I think about it, one moment I'm there, and then it just happens, and I can't place how long or how far of time span it was. But I had just got through talking to Mom and Dad, and Johnny had pulled up, and Dad had sat down and put his foot on the coffee table and took the liquor and drank it and set it back down. Next thing you know, the front door of the trailer's door just slams open, and my brother comes running in. And he runs over and grabs the bottle of liquor straight out of my daddy's hand and grabs it like this and starts drinking it. And I remember it started going all down his chest. And he slams it down, and my dad was wanting to get up, and my mom pushed him back and said, just calm down, calm down, calm down. And he told her, he said, you need to get out of my MFing house and all that mess. And my brother tells him, he says, well, you see these tattoos right here? He said, if you mess with me, this is where I'll put you at. Told my dad he's going to put him in the graveyard. So I'm young, I'm 19. I grabbed my brother and run him out the front door of the trailer, pushed him, and he's trying to fight me, and I get him out and I shut the door, and I'm holding the door, and my dad comes up behind me telling me to get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way. And finally I said, I'm not getting out of the way. So I look out the little window, it had a little curtain on the door, and I look out and I see I finally realized who my brother had come there with, a friend of mine named Grover. And Grover had got him in the truck, and I seen the truck actually leaving the driveway. We had a circle drive-through. And so I said, and I looked back at my daddy, he gritted his teeth, he said, last time, he was fixing to hit me. Last time I'm telling you to get out of the way. So my mama said, move. So I did. And so I started walking down the hallway. And then I heard my mama say, what is it? And I heard her holler my brother Robert's name. So instead of turning around and running up the front door where my daddy was at, I decided to run down the hallway and out the back door around the front of the trailer. Well, when I run down the hallway and out the back door and around the front of the trailer, and when I got around there, it was right then is when I seen it. I seen my dad had a pistol, he shot him right in the head. When he shot him in the head, he fell on the ground. And I ran over there to him. It was all in a flash. And I looked up at him, and first I looked at my brother, and he had about the size, big around as my pinky right here. He had a hole, and it started bulging out, and there was like white stuff coming out of him, a little bit of blood, not much blood. And I looked at my dad, and I said, I was screaming at him, why'd you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And he said, look over there. And I looked, and my buddy Grover used to keep a knife, a deer knife, sharp on both sides, and a sheath in his rearview mirror hanging. And my brother grabbed that knife out and swiped at my dad with it. I found out later it was true. I didn't believe him at the moment, but I found out later it cut all the way through his windbreaker and through his t-shirt and scratched him, but almost could have cut his guts out. But anyhow, so he said he pulled that knife on me, and he tried to cut me with it, And so I shot him and killed him. And he said, I shot him. Is he dead? And so I ran back over there and I grabbed my brother and I got down there. And I grabbed him by his hand and I said, Robert, he had his eyes closed. I said, Robert, can you hear me? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, please squeeze my hand. And today I can tell you right now, he squeezed my right hand and 2 tears rolled out of his eyes. And that was it. He died. Yeah. But, God get the glory. I started telling my daddy how much I hated him. And he told me, he said, if you say that again, I'm going to put you right where he's at. So, he said, go get a blanket and cover him up. So, anyhow, let me get myself back together here. So, my mama ran and got a blanket and came out there and gave it to me and told me to cover him up. So I covered him up. And the neighbors were outside and my dad hollered at the neighbors because we didn't have a phone. As I said, my dad wouldn't work. He wouldn't do nothing but drink. And so they called the police. And next thing you know, about 30 cop cars come. And they all pulled up, lined up down the road because my dad's reputation was real bad, real bad. And they stopped. They didn't come in the yard. And one of them got out and said, his name was Johnny, my daddy. He said, Johnny, can I talk to you? And my daddy told him, he said, yeah, you can talk to me. He said, well, are you armed? He said, not now. He said, I had 2 pistols on me and I took the cylinders out of both of them and the bullets are on the ground over there. He said, I just killed that boy right there. And he said, well, can you come over here and sit in my car for me? And he said, yeah, I can go. Yeah, I can do that. So he went over there and put him in the car. And so then all the cops started coming into the yard and they started hollering at me. And so I had took it upon myself that I was going to go get my shotgun because I had a pump shotgun and come out there and just start shooting the police. So I did. I ran into the house and I got my pump shotgun and it's 12 gauge and I had double lock bullets in it and I pumped it one time and came back in the back door of the trailer and was running down the hallway and my mama stopped me. And she said, she fought me tooth and nail with the gun. You ain't going out there, please. So she finally talked me down, took it from me. And I went outside. She let me go back outside after a few minutes because I told her I'm going out there. And so she finally let me go back out there. And something came over me. Now I know it was God. It was the Lord. It was the Lord that came over me and calmed me down to keep me from getting killed. And because they would have killed me. And so when I went back out there, the cop that was writing a report, he said, your dad wants to talk to you over there. And I said, I don't want to talk to him. And I kept looking over there and he's knocking on the side of the glass sitting in the back seat doing, come here, come here, come here. So finally I said, okay, I'll go see what he wants. So I get over there and this man ain't never smoked a cigarette in his life. First thing he asks me to do is go get him a cigarette. I said, you gotta be kidding me right now. Are you serious? I said, I told him, I said, I hate you. I don't want to never see you again. You just killed my brother for no reason. He said, I told you I didn't kill him for no reason. I told you I didn't kill him for no reason. So anyhow, the cop goes over there and pulls the blanket off, and for some reason, he felt my brother's pulse and called for a lifeline. So a helicopter landed in the driveway, and they brought him back to life. And they life-flighted him out of there and they took him to the hospital. Well, he did die. Hold on, he did die. But he was brain dead, but they brought his heart, they put that thing on him and brought his heart back to beating. But he did die right there with me. Anyhow, let me get past this here. I gotta get past this part. But I can see now how God had brought me through all of that, and He gets the glory for that. But all this is part of what I had to go through. This is just a part of what I had to go through to just say yeah to the Lord. But so one of my buddies' daddy, Paul Jennings, pulled up. He was 100. He had a big 4-wheel drive truck, and he jumped out. And he heard about it. He come down there, and he was more concerned about getting me out of there than anything, because he always liked me. He always told me I was a good, well-mannered kid, and he really liked me. And so he come there, and he said, come on and go with me, man. Come on. He talked me into getting in his truck and leaving with him. Thank God. So I left and I went down there to his house, and his wife tried to get me to eat, and I was sitting there shaking and everything, and I couldn't eat or do nothing. And so they didn't know God or nothing neither, but they just sat there and tried to talk to me. And then finally I said, okay, do you think the cops are gone by now? And he said, well, let me go check, and please stay here with Barbara, and let me go check before you go back down there. Please don't go back down there while the police are there. So he came by, I waited, I said, okay. He came back, he said, okay, they're still there. He said, but there's only one there. They done took your daddy to jail, and he's doing a bunch of paperwork. But you can probably go back, he's not gonna bother you. So when I go back, everybody's gone. My mom done took all her clothes and all her stuff and left and went to my granny's house all the way across town. She's gone. So I sat there. And I said, well, I got to get rid of this pain somehow. I didn't know I could get on my knees and pray. So I commenced to started drinking and drugging it up. And it just started a cycle in my life. So anyhow, 3 days goes by, and I'm sitting in there and on the same couch with my foot on the same coffee table by myself. I've been there like 3 days. I ain't ate, did nothing but sit there and drink and pass out and wake back up. And I'm in like shock. I don't really remember a whole bunch of it. And there was a knock on the door, and I come to the door, and there was a police officer, and he said, turn around. So I turned around, and he put handcuffs on me. I said, what are you putting me in jail for? He said, I'm putting you in jail for accessory to first-degree murder. I said, do what? I said, what are you talking about? But I was so out of it that I just didn't really, it was like a wave to me. But anyhow, so they put me in jail, and my brother's girlfriend lied and said that she was there and said that she seen me give my dad the gun to do it. So anyhow, they put me in jail, and after about 48 hours, after hearing witness testimonies, everybody that saw everything, including my dad, they came and released me. So when they released me, I commenced to just go on and doing my thing. So I started using cocaine intravenously, and it led to a cycle of a pattern of where I just can't really remember a whole bunch of lot of anything, but I know one thing. They taught us how to steal back then. Steal paper machines. You take and put back then. You'd go and put quarters in the paper machines. I think it was a quarter or 50 cents, and you take the paper out. So we would take and steal the paper machines. And one night we were stealing a paper machine, and we didn't know that the store had got robbed just prior to that, the night before, and there was a stake out there. Well, my dad had taught me to carry a pistol with me ever since I was like 15, and so it was in the winter time. And well, when we put I had the bolt cutters because they started chaining them down, so I got out with the bolt cutters and cut the chain off. And Mark and a guy named David, he was from California, we called him Cali. They Mark and Callie put it in the back of the trunk. It was a Chevrolet, it was a Chevelle, and put it in the back of the Chevelle. And we got in and we drove off, and we was going down Dunn's Creek Road. Next thing you know, a car pulled up behind us with no headlights, and we started going, woo, woo, woo. We could hear it. And it wouldn't get off our tail or nothing. And so I just reached out the window with my pistol and shot at it. Bam, bam, shot at it 3 or 4 times. And next thing you know, it was blue lights. And so we started speeding up, and we sped around the curve, and there was a roadblock. And he crashed sideways into the ditch, and it slung us all up to one side of the car, and they shot the car up like 100-something times. And whenever I can remember hearing Mark holler, "Little John, you still alive? Little John, you still alive?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm back here." He's like, "Don't move. Whatever you do, don't move. They're going to kill us. Don't move." And I don't know what Callie was doing. I don't even know. I didn't ever even hear his voice or nothing, but he didn't get hit neither. None of us got hit by a bullet or nothing. And whenever the police came up to the car, they hollered, "Is anybody in there?" And Mark goes, "Yeah, we're in here." And I guess he must have heard the youthfulness. And he said, "How old are y'all?" And I said, "I'm 15. And he said, "I'm 17. And he said, "Well, y'all just come on out of there then and hold your hands up where I can see them." So anyhow, they put us in juvenile and wound up putting me in a program. And so I never got to meet Jesus yet, but he still had his hand on my life. They put me in a program where I canoed for over like 1,200 miles, the Ocklawaha, the Altamaha, and all kind of rivers. But they put us on this canoeing expedition for 30 days, and that was our punishment, to keep from going to the Marietta State School for Boys. So anyhow, wait a minute, yeah, okay. And then after that, I got out and went right back. And they wound up giving my dad, because my brother escaped from prison, and my granddaddy had a lot of money and a lot of pull. He spent a lot of money to keep my daddy out of off of death row and a life sentence. But they gave my dad 10 years in prison for it, for manslaughter. And well, when my dad went to prison and my mom moved away, that left me by myself. And my grandmother tried to get me to come out there, but by that time I was too far gone in drugs and the fast lane and that type of life. I didn't even want to hear nothing. I didn't care what anybody said. Nobody could tell me nothing. They had took my dad and my brother, everybody. I just didn't care about anything anymore. And so one night I go to this bar to make a drug deal. And this guy in there, he's supposed to be dating my cousin, and I see him kissing on this girl. And so I called him out on it. And one of his friends hit me in the back of the head with a pool stick. And next thing you know, shots rang out. Well, the girl, it wasn't me, but the girl come and got me and said, "The police are surrounded the building and they're looking for you." I said, "Do what?" She said, "Yeah, open the back door, go out the back door." So I ran down the hallway and ran out the back door. And as soon as I ran out the back door, I still got the scar here. The big old cop, they called him Freight Train, hit me in the back of the head with a .357 Magnum. Bam! And when he did, the gun went off and gave me powder burn in my whole side of my head. I couldn't hear nothing. All this whole side over here was blacked out. So I took off running, and I dove down into this ditch line. And up this hill, there's a store there. And I ran sideways, zigzagging, and they're shooting at me. So I jump over this white picket fence, and I see a truck sitting there with a gasoline nozzle in it running. So I jumped in it and drove off. Well, I can stand here today and tell you the truth, and the Lord knows it's the truth. The police lied on the police report and said that I shot at them. And because at that time, I don't know if anybody here remembers it, down in Miami, a young kid had stole a carjacked a car from 2 German tourists and killed them right in the streets of Miami, where they had just come out with a law called carjacking. Well, I was the second person charged in the state with armed carjacking. They charged me with armed carjacking and 3 counts of aggravated assault on a police officer. Well, and when they finally pulled up behind me in the truck, and I took them on a 4-county chase, bashed in a bunch of police cars, and what finally stopped me, I ran through a yard, and the fence, the chain link fence, got caught up in the drive shaft, and finally the car stopped. God was with me then too, because they shot at the truck, but I surrendered, and so they didn't kill me. Anyhow, they put me in jail, and their first offer was where they wanted to give me life plus 30 years. So I stayed in the county jail 2.5 years. And so then they dropped it down to 60 years with a 30-year minimum mandatory. And so my grandfather hired a lawyer for some reason. I guess because of my grandmother, well, the Lord. And I wound up getting 30 years with a 15-year minimum mandatory. And so I wound up going to Rayford, which is where they got death row at, up here in North Florida. It's right outside of Jacksonville, where I was raised up. It's in Stark, Florida. And when I got there, they made me a runaround on death row, and I used to take the cart up and down the wings on death row and feed the guys on death row and pass books and all this and that for them. Anyhow, I stayed there for 5.5 years, and lots of fights, got stabbed 3 times there, lots of fights, got beat up a bunch, got maced a lot with the police, by the cops, and so they put me on, it's called closed management. And at this time, I still ain't even thinking about God or nothing, but my grandmother's still alive, still praying for me. And I found this out later. So they put me behind the door for 5 years. And behind the door means you go in an 8x10 cell and you don't come out but 1 time a day for an hour. And 1 time a week for an hour for outside recreation. Well, I didn't want to come out for the recreation period because I didn't want to see the outside. It made me sad. So, but I'd come out to get my shower though, and thank God. But anyhow, whenever you come down off after you do a 1.5 years, they put you in a roommate. They put you down to CM2, and they give you a roommate. Well, I didn't like my roommates, so I just beat them up and go back home CM1 so I could be by myself. And so the warden said, well, you're never going to get out of here. I said, well, you're never going to give me a roommate that I like. So we're just going to keep doing this, huh? So finally he said, no, I'm going to put you on house alone and I'll let you go down like that. And I said, okay, that'll work. So so finally I get from behind the door. Well, while I'm behind the door, I decided I was going to get a roommate. So they put a guy in there. He comes in, he's got a red dot on his eye here, between his eyes. And he's called himself Hinduism. And he'd get up there and tell you, and he tried to get me to do it, and he's got this Indian lady out here in California who was sending him these things about meditation and stuff. And so he said, well, you need to try it. So I said, all right, I'll try it. So he took this marker and he put this dot on my thing, and I'm on the bottom bunk, and he said, read this paper. So I read the paper, and he said, hum and focus until you see the light. And when you see the light, you'll see God. And I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing at all. Finally, I got so tired of it, I just threw the paperwork up there and told him to forget that. So what I had did is he had me fill out the application to get all the pamphlets from this lady out here in California. I forget her name, thank God. But he said, so they come and let him out. And so he said, but you'll be getting the pamphlet. You'll be getting it soon. Just make sure you keep searching for the light. You'll get it. I promise you. And when you get it, you'll know all about karma, and you'll be able to read people's minds, and you'll be able to do everything then. You'll be enlightened, he told me. So one day, my beam flap opens. It's called a beam flap. They open it up so you can put your food tray in there. And this mail call. And I'm thinking, here comes that packet. Because I don't get no mail. I don't got no mail. Nobody writing me. My grandmother might write me once in a blue moon. That's it. And in comes flying in a King James Bible. So I said, wow. So I reached over and grabbed the Bible, and I looked at it, and I said, well, it's pretty, ain't it? I was talking to myself, and I set it down. And I just started using it to write on and draw on. I never even opened it. I just looked at it. But I kept it with me. So finally they said, okay, they changed the prison I was at to a 55 plus prison. So they said, well, if you're under that, you got to transfer. So just out of nowhere, ping, they transferred me. So they took me from Rayford, they took me to Tomoka, which is in Daytona. So when I get there, it's an open compound. So I'm like, wow, this is totally different. It's like being free now, almost. They're walking around with flip-flops and shorts on. And where I just come from, you got to wear boots and denim jeans and button up like this here, and shaved. And if you're not shaved, they'll make you dry shave right in front of you and mace you and beat your butt and everything else. So anyhow, so I get to Tomoka Correctional Institution. Well, when I get to Tomoka, my daddy comes and sees me. Hopefully I'm not getting ahead of someone. I'm not missing anybody. Hopefully everybody can stay focused on where I'm at right now in this vivid life that I had back then. So I get to Tomoka, and my daddy comes and sees me, and he tells me, he says, your mama's dying. I said, don't play with me like that. He said, your mama's got cancer, she's dying. She got cervical cancer. He said, I said, please don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. Please don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. He said, it's in her bones and everything. He said, she weighs like 90 pounds. And he said, I'm going to try to bring her down here to see you one time. So he did. He brought her, but he stayed in the car and stayed out there and got drunk in the parking lot and let her walk into there, barely could walk. So she came and saw me for the last time. And she told me, she said, always remember that mustard seed. She said, son, all you got to do is have faith of a mustard seed. Remember that. That's what she kept telling me. And then when I grew up out there, with the only time I ever heard anything about God when I'd be at my grandma's house. But other than that, out there, I never heard nothing about God. I never heard nothing about Jesus. I never heard nothing about none of it. And I didn't know that God loved me or nothing. Anyhow, sure enough, he came back about a month later. I didn't get no letters or nothing. He came back a month later and had a special visit during the middle of the week. They just called me up to go up to the front. You got a special visit. I was like, what do you mean? And I didn't know what a special visit was. I never even had a visit but two. And by this time, I'd been incarcerated 8 years. And he said, the man told me, he said, it's your dad's here, and he's got another gentleman with him. I said, oh, okay, cool. So they got me in, not in the visiting park, they got us in this little room. So we go in there, and he's smiling and laughing, and he's got a guy named Billy Linton with him, which was a real nice guy, really. He was a real nice guy my whole life. To me, he was. He was like an uncle to me. Every time he seen me, he always do something good for me, you know. To me, being good, if you was just nice to me, was good. But so anyhow, he came in there and said, "Your mama died." And I said, "Man, wow." So I got up and left. I wouldn't even visit with him. I left. I couldn't take it. So I left. And at that time, I was working in the medical department. They had, I was on the plumbing crew, and one day I was putting in a water fountain for the warden, and one day a lady came through there, a nurse, and she had these big jackets. A jacket is a folder with inmates' medical records. Some inmates with medical records, they've been down 20 years, it's that thick. Some of them been down a year, it's that thick. Well, she had like 10 jackets, and she was trying to tote them. She was a little skinny little thing. And I was putting in the water fountain, and I said, "Ma'am, let me get them for you and help you." So I grabbed them for her and helped her, and toted them all the way down the hall, all the way around the corner, down there, and through the metal detector, and through the gate, and everything, and got them in there to her desk. And then on the way out, she said, "Thank you." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, no problem." And she stopped me. She said, "Hey." And I said, "Yeah." And so she said, "Come here." She said, "Would you like to work for me?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Would you like to work for me here in medical?" She said, "I got a spot here in the infirmary here. I need somebody like you. But I need somebody dedicated with compassion." I didn't even know what the word compassion meant. So I asked her, I said, "What does compassion mean?" And she said, "Somebody that has the ability to care for somebody and to help somebody in need." And I was like, "Ma'am, I can't promise you that. I mean, I can try." And she said, "I think you got it in you." I said, "Well, I guess I'll think about it." And she said, "Well, if you want to, when they call sick call, just come up here and let me know, and talk to your boss man, and I'll get you over here." So I went back and I told my boss man, and he was like, "Oh, she's cute. I think she likes you. You ought to immediately get a job with her." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll sign off on it. You can get a job with her. I think it'll be a good thing for you." And then I didn't know it, that I was fixing to be in there with guys that's been shot by the police, paralyzed, pooping on themselves. I'm going to have to change diapers. I'm going to have to help them pee in bottles. I'm going to have to bathe them. I'm going to have to change their beds, feed them. I didn't know all this at this time. But that was God preparing me. Amen. So anyhow, I get the job in there. So as I get this job, I notice it's kind of I thought it was going to be hard on me at first, because a couple of the guys, they were mean. But it started getting easier on me in my heart. And it was, I know now it was the Lord using them to wear my heart down. So as I would leave there at night and come to the dorm, back from the medical department to the dorm is where you sleep at, like army barracks, old army barracks. And every time I would come in the building and walk past the officer station to go to my bunk, there'd be a Bible tract there. Every single time. And I wouldn't look, stop, pick it up, but I'd always see it. It'd have the word Jesus on it. Whether it be sideways, tilted, or some kind of way, and I'd always see that word Jesus, and I'd do this way and walk this way. So finally one day, when I walked by it, I grabbed it. And I went over there and I sat down, crossed my feet. I was tired. I'd been up all night working in the infirmary. And so I opened the first page. And whenever I opened up the first page, it was a picture of fire. And it looked like somebody trying to crawl out of this fire. And I was like, so I shut it back. I knew what hell was. I knew what it was. So I shut it back and kind of tucked it underneath me and laid over and went to sleep. So I got the permission to sleep in the daytime because I worked at night where everybody else was. If I could, I tried to sleep, but it was so noisy I barely could. So I got woke up. Anyhow, when I went to work that night, I decided to take that thing with me. So I took it with me. When I got time, I went and sat on a 5-gallon bucket in the mop room, and I opened it up and I started reading it. Well, it was the first time in my life I'd ever read John 3:16. So I read it. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, you know. Whosoever believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And I couldn't grasp what everlasting life was. I didn't know what that meant. And so I said, something just told me to carry it with me. So I said, all right. So I just started putting it in my back pocket with me. So I started just carrying the same Bible tract with me. Well, my daddy came to see me again. He said, son, I'm dying. I said, you dying? I said, don't come down here and tell me that. Well, his belly was swelled up like this. He said, I got stage 4 liver cancer and cirrhosis. He said, I got less than a year to live. He said, to be honest with you, I don't want to live no more. I said, well, that's a real nice thing to come and tell me. I appreciate that. That's exactly what I told him. I said, you know, it would really be nice if you would come and tell me, you know, that you would stop drinking and try to hang on until I get out. I got about 12 more years before I get out. And by the time I'd been down 9 to 10 years, something like that. And that was in June of '98. I never seen him again. So, and it's hard here. I didn't know it is. So anyhow, July 2nd, he died. But anyhow, I called my daddy's brother, my Uncle Mike. He had throat cancer. Well, my grandmother and my grandfather were still alive. Well, my grandmother and my grandfather had split up because my grandfather had an adulterous relationship with a younger woman. But my grandmother stayed celibate. She believed in one man, one woman her whole life. And she prayed her whole life that she could get back with her husband, the father of her children, so she could try to get him saved before she died. Well, anyhow, she had moved back in with my grandfather. Well, my Uncle Mike, he was one of my daddy's youngest brothers. He was dying of throat cancer. And I went and called him, and he had one of them talking machines. I don't know if y'all know what that is. You put it up there and you talk. You ever heard one of them? They talk through it. And he'd have to talk to me on the phone through that talking machine. And so I called him that day, and he said, Ron, I gotta tell you something, and I want you to brace yourself. And I said, what? He said, your daddy died last night. And I was like, wow. I didn't know what to think at first. I didn't have no feeling at first. And the first thing that came to my mind was my brother laying there dead. And I was like, how? Did I love him or did I not? I was trying to convince myself, did I love him or did I not? And then I just dropped the phone, didn't even finish the phone call, and walked over to medical and knocked on the glass. And the man looked at me and he said, he just automatically opened the glass because he knew I worked in medical. And when I got back there, just so happened my boss lady was working that day. And I said, Miss Mac, my daddy died, can I please be by myself? So she said, yeah, immediately. Took me all the way in the back. And where she sat at the desk, the infirmary was to the left, where there was a hallway all the way in the back. And it was a one room for people like they had pneumonia or anything, and it was empty. She put me in the back there. She didn't lock the door, she didn't call them or nothing. She just said, look, I'm gonna call the dorm, and I'm just gonna tell them you're having an extended work thing, so you don't have to lose your bed or nothing. You just stay back there as long as you need to be. So when I got back there, she came back there and she tried to comfort me, and I didn't know what to think. And when she left, I walked right over to the corner, and I was and the bed was behind me. And Lord, you know I'm telling the truth. And I was getting ready to cuss God and tell him about taking my daddy and my brother. And as soon as I went to open my mouth, my tongue cleaved to the roof of my mouth, and supernaturally, some power, I don't know what it was, throwed me on that bed. And I never said a word. I never said a word. And I fell asleep. And next thing I know, she was waking me up with some food. The lady was waking me up with some food. And I know now that God did not want me to cuss him because he had a better plan for me. So she woke me up with some food. Ain't that something how God likes to comfort us with food? He fed Elijah too with a bird.
Yes, sir.
So anyhow, thank you, darling. And so we get to speed this thing up a little bit. How long have I been over, Pastor?
Go ahead, brother. Obey God.
So anyhow, finally, one of my buddies, he was a tattoo artist, and his name was Greg Kelly. He was from Maine. His daddy, he was a military brat, but I kind of liked him because he was spunky, and he didn't take no crap neither. And me and him kind of like hooked up together, and because there were some pretty bad boys in there, and you know you had to have somebody to watch your back, you watch his back, and you watch your back. You called it your dog. Everybody had a dog. If you didn't have a dog, then you had nobody to watch your back. So anyhow, he came and saw me, and he said he bought me some canteen, some cookies and stuff like that. I said I don't want that. He said, well, won't you come on out of here then, man? He said, come on out here, man. I'm going to talk to you. Let's just walk the rec field with me. Come on, let me talk to you. So finally I said, all right, I'll come on up out of there then. So I came on up out of there then and went on out there and went back to my bunk for a minute. I said, let me go to my bunk. So I opened up my locker and ain't nothing in it because I never got no canteen, no letters or nothing anyhow. But I opened it up just to see if anything was still in there. I think I had a deodorant, and back then I had hair. I think I had a little bit of shampoo. So I locked it back with a combination lock, and we walked around the track, and he went to talking to me and telling me, you know, my dad died too, and I found comfort in God, man. And he said, I don't know what your religious status is or anything like that, and I ain't trying to intrude in on that or nothing. He said, but dude, maybe you need to talk to God. And I told him, I said, I never even thought about that, really, to be honest with you. And he said, well, I really ain't a religious man. He said, but whenever my dad died, I found myself talking to God. And I was asking him, I said, well, did it help? He said, yeah, a little bit for a time. And I said, okay. So we walked around the track. So anyhow, little time passed, everything, and then they called me to the chaplain's office one day. I'm out there playing racquetball. I like to play racquetball. And you only get 1 hour a day to play racquetball, so I had to hurry up and get out there, and I'm in the heat of the game, and next thing you know, John Bowden reported to the chaplain's office. And I looked around, everybody's like, man, somebody done died. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, that's what happens, man, whenever they call you there like that. I mean, somebody done died. I said, oh my Lord, who is it? I wonder. And somebody told me, go find out. So I went up the back walk to the chaplain's office, and I hadn't been in no chaplain. I'm scared to go in there. And I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to go in there, so I knocked on the door. And the clerk came to the door and he said, we had to have IDs. And he looked at my name and said, yeah, come on in. So I went in, I looked around, and he took me down this hallway, and I noticed there was these curtains over there, and I said, what is that over there? And he said, that's the prayer room. He said, that's for anybody who wants to come off the compound during chapel hours, you can go in there and pray by yourself. I said, oh, okay. So took me in there, and I got on the phone. It was my grandmother, and she said, your Uncle Mike died. I said, nah, for real. And I really took that bad. And so, on the way out, I took a left and went in that first time I ever talked to God. I went in there and I just said, God, why do you keep taking all these people from me? What did I do to you? What's wrong with me? And I left. And so some more time transpired. A couple more, let's say about a year and a half. So a year and a half goes by, and I get a letter in the mail. One day they call mail. I don't get no mail, so, but I heard my name called, and I was like, wow. And it's a letter from my sister, and my wife knows I still got the same letter. And she wrote me, and she said, well, sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry I ain't been to see you, and I ain't been able to, but I got a bad boyfriend, and I don't have no car or nothing else I'd have been to see you. She said, but I got the same cancer Mama had. And she said, I got 6 months to live. And I said, wow, come on, don't tell me this. I thought you'd be there at least. Sure enough, she died 6 months to the day. So anyhow, after that, my grandma died. Then my grandpa died. Let's back up. My grandma and my grandpa died first, and then they called me up there, and that's right. Then they called me up there and told me my sister died. Here we go. Okay, now I got it. I ran ahead of myself. First, I got the call that my grandma had died, and then I got the call that my grandpa had died, and then they called me one night to, that's right, to the captain's office in the middle of the night. And I thought it was for a urine test, because they started doing urine tests, and I smoked marijuana, and they give you 60 days in the confinement for smoking marijuana, and I didn't want to lose my job in medical. So I was scared. I went to drinking a lot of water. Because if you drink a lot of water, you might pass the urinalysis test, they say. So when I get up to the captain's office, he's nice as can be. He says, come in here and sit down. So you got a phone call. So I went in there, and he handed me the phone, and this girl gets on the phone. She said, you Little John? I said, yeah, that's me. She said, I'm your sister Missy's best friend, and I'm just doing what she promised me to do. She said, I want to let you know Missy died last night, and she told me to tell you that she accepted Christ as her Savior, and that she was going to heaven, and she wanted you to make sure that you know that she was in heaven with your mom and daddy, and that she hoped one day you'd make it there. And it just broke me to pieces. And so I left there. I was just shattered. I left there and I went back to the dorm, and I told my buddy, I said, man, my sister just died. And he was like, he made an announcement, everybody, y'all leave him alone. So I had all my clothes on, my boots and everything. And I got up under this wool blanket and I fell asleep. And I don't know what time of night it was. I know it was night. It was way past night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. It was after the last count. Because I remember him coming through and counting. I remember him hollering, leave him alone, his sister just died. So it had to be at least 2 o'clock in the morning. And I felt something tap me on my leg. And I was so numb, I'm up under there, and I can sit here today and say I cried myself to sleep. I was just totally broken. And I said, yeah. And I heard a voice say, it's me. It's me, Little John. And I said, who is it? He said, it's me, it's Jesus. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, I've been with you your whole life. And I was like, is that you, Lord, for real? He's like, yeah, I'm holding you right now. And I could hear myself. I was like, my eyes were open, but it wasn't, and I could hear it. I was in this bubble, and I was like going like, something like out of a Star Trek movie or something. And I was like, and he was like, I'm holding you. And I told him, I said, Lord, I don't even want to go to heaven. And he said, why? I said, because I don't want to go to heaven if my mom and dad and Missy ain't there. And he said, son, I want you to get up and go look out that window over there. So I got up. I know this might be hard for somebody to believe, but this is the honest truth. I got up and I walked over there to the window and I looked out. It was dark outside. Like I said, it was about 2 o'clock at night. And they had this metal over the windows so I could see. If I got close enough, I could see out there. And I looked out there and it was the sky and it was black. And next thing you know, I see these 3 faces smiling at me. And it was my mom and my daddy and my sister. And I was like, wow. And then they disappeared. And I turned around and I looked and there was my body. And I was like, wow. And next thing you know, I just walked back over there and got back in my body and laid back down. And when I laid back down, I covered back up and I laid there for a minute. And next thing you know, I felt this warm sensation come over me again, like I'm almost getting ready, like I'm melting. Like my whole body's melting, literally melting. But it felt good. I liked it. I can't explain it to this day. And I said, Lord, is that you? And I heard him just like, not an audible voice, just like a real soft whisper go, it's me. And he's like, I've been with you your whole life. And I want you to do good. I want you to come and be with me and talk to me. And he just disappeared. And I fell asleep and I woke up the next morning. And as I remember now, someone prior to that had, y'all remember that same Bible I was telling y'all about that came in that cell? I still had that same Bible. And it was a red King James Bible, and I still got it at home now. It's over 20 years old. It's so old, I got it taped up with clear tape. Every page and every verse in it's been marked. It's completely fell to pieces. I tried to get it restored, remember? But he said it would cost too much to get it restored, and I'll just buy a new one. But so I just had this awesome hunger for the Word. And I started reading the Word, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And then next thing you know, this guy sees me with a Word out. He's a Puerto Rican guy, and he comes over, and he puts his hand on me, and I thought he was gay or something at first. And I looked up at him. He's like, no, it's okay. He's like, I'm a brother in Christ. I'd never heard that before. He's like, if you need help understanding that, just let me know. If you want to do some fellowshipping or praying or talking, I didn't know what none of that meant. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right. And so I just sat over the bed. There was a single bunk like this here, and I'd sit over it like this here with my legs out, and I'd read the Bible. Well, at this specific time, while all this was transpiring, I ran the football ticket, and I made wine, and I ran the NASCAR pool, and it was well known. They called me Johnny B, the ticket man. And that's how I had to live in there. I didn't have no money. Nobody sent me no money. My granddaddy wouldn't let my grandmother send me no money. He said he'd send me a pair of dice so I could get my own money. That was it. And I seen all these people in the canteens all the time and getting visits, and I just, I got tired of eating the same old prison food. So back then it was called a hustle. You get your hustle. So I did that, and from the moment I had that experience with the Lord, and I woke up that morning and was reading that Bible, I had, like, back then the money in the prison was packs of cigarettes, top tobacco in packs. And I had, like, I can't even tell you how many, and over 100 of them in there, packed sideways, this way, that way. And I opened up my thing and started throwing them out to people, and they started running up like cockroaches catching them. I was throwing them out everywhere, and I ripped up the paperwork, ripped everything up, And the Puerto Rican guy, he's standing there watching me. I see him out the corner of my eye, and I see him laughing. I see him starts clapping his hands. What in the world? So anyhow, I'm new to all this, right? And so I get rid of everything out of there. And I had a little marijuana too, and I gave it away. And so he comes over there and he says, "You did the right thing, my brother. I'm proud of you." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Where we're going?" He said, "Today's Saturday, tomorrow's church." He said, "Why don't you get up in the morning and go to the chapel with me and go to church?" I was like, "Nah, I can't do that, man. I can't do that. Ain't no way I can do that." And he's like, "Think about it then." And I said, "All right, I'll think about it." So I stayed up half the night reading the Bible. And no more experience, no more encounters with Jesus or none of that. And that morning, I fell asleep probably, I don't know, I think like 1 o'clock in the morning reading the Bible. I was so hungry for the Word. I didn't even really understand it. I know what I liked the most about it, my name was in it a lot. So I just kept reading where my name was at, John. And then I noticed my name was in it 4 times. I liked that. So I just kept reading it everywhere my name was at, and over and over and over again. And morning time come, he's standing right there in front of my bunk. And I'm looking at him, and I didn't want to be rude to the guy. I was like, "Man, this early?" He's like, "Yeah, it's time to go." He said, I didn't want to go. I was trying to back out of it. And he's like, "Come on, man, come on, get dressed, hurry up, come on, we got to go." He's rushing me. And so I said, all right. I get dressed and everything, and get my clothes and everything. And as I grab that Bible, and as we go out on the compound, out the dorm, you got to walk past the gambling tables. You got to walk past the dope hole. You got to walk past the handball courts where they all get high and drink at. Then you got to walk past where the ticket thing is. So you got to go up the sidewalk past all of these people, and here I am toting the Bible. So as we go to moving, and he's just happy-go-lucky, walking right, and I'm telling you, this is the hardest walk I ever had in my life. I start walking, and as I start walking, I start crying. And I heard somebody go, "Hey, there goes Johnny Bowden. Look at Johnny over there crying with the Bible, y'all. Look at him. Look at him over there crying with the Bible." And I was just squeezing it harder and harder, and it felt like I couldn't even walk. There was so much pressure on me. And I just started crying, and he reached back and he grabbed me by the hand. He said, "Come on." And when he touched me, all that pressure was off of me. And he just led me. This man, the Puerto Rican guy, he just led me. He finally let go of my hand, and I started following him, and he led me all the way into the chapel. Well, this is the first message I remember ever hearing. When we went in there was a guy, a white guy, about 38 years old. He was a nice looking guy. He had blonde hair, and he combed it to the side. And we went in there, and we all had to sit down in these chairs. And he got up behind the pulpit. He had a microphone. And first thing, he said, "Everybody, let's pray." And he prayed. And I'll tell you what, he took off. And he went to screaming and hollering, talking about one day Jesus Christ is going to come back and cut that eastern sky from the east to the west. And anybody ain't ready, when he cracks that sky, they going to hell. He was preaching fire and brimstone. They going to hell. And boy, I'll tell you what, I didn't know to be scared, happy, or what. And I was just clenching that Bible, and I'm watching him, and I'm looking. And Oye, the guy, I called him Oye. I still didn't know his name. And because everybody called him Oye. So he's sitting next to me. He's clapping and all happy. Yeah. And well, I know now what it is, but I'm just telling y'all back then I didn't know what it was. And so after we got through preaching and everything, this man points me out of all the people in there, like 20-something convicts in there. He goes, "Hey, you." And I go like this. I went. He said, "No, you." I said, "Me?" He said, "Yeah, you. Come here." I said, What do you want me for?" He said, "Come here, I got to tell you something." So I got up there and he laid his hand on me and he said, "God told me to tell you, man, that he loves you. He's got a big plan for your life. He knows what you've been going through. He knows what you've been through. He's got a plan. Just hang on and don't give up. And I said, all right. He said, you received that? I said, yeah, I received it. And so I go back to the dorm. So I go back to reading the Bible. And so next thing you know, people start hitting my bunk. So I start getting agitated because every time you hit my bunk, you messing me up reading my Bible. So now I'm about ready to fight now because it seems like they're purposely hitting my bunk because they see me reading the Bible. So I didn't though. I kept myself calm, luckily. So next thing you know, a guy that I had known for a long time had come to prison when he was 16 years old. He was from Lakeland, Florida, and he had killed a man that raped his mama over off Wabash. He stabbed him in the parking lot of the gas station for raping his mama. And I met him as a kid when he come to prison the first time. Well, he got out and he violated his parole and then he come back again. So he's there at the prison, and he just walks up to me one day and he says, no, he come back to the compound and I seen him and he said, man, I'm not like that no more. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, I'm not gay no more. I got a wife, and I didn't know he was even gay. I really didn't. And he said, I'm not like that no more. I guess he was gay, I don't know. But he said, I'm not like that no more. I got a wife now. And I was like, really? I said, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Because I had known him since he was a kid. He was 16 when he come to prison. They had turned him out. They call that turning him out. And so he said, yeah. Well, we went to play handball together and everything. Now this is a very special part of my testimony where God had really started doing mighty miracles. So he came up to me one day and he said, look, I told my wife and her grandma about your situation, and her grandma wants to be your godmother because she feels sorry for you, just to be straight up with you, and she just wants to be a friend to you. And I told her, you don't get no canteen, you don't get no visits and everything that's happened to you, and she wants to be your friend. And I said, all right, cool. He said, you'll get if you put her on your visiting list, you can come out and visit with me and eat lunch, and and you can. He told me straight up, he said, you can be partially half human again. That's what he basically told me. I said, all right, because he knowed I'd been down all them years. And so that never transpired right there at Tomoka. So one day he walked in and he said, look, something bad's happened and I'm fixing to go to Polk Correctional Institution. And I done talked to the man, and the man said, I can take you with me. All you got to do is say yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm from Jacksonville. I'm at Daytona. I'm already close to home. And now you want me to go farther away from home? And he's like, yeah. That's exactly what I want you to do. He said, I think it'll be good for you. I said, no, I don't think I'm going, buddy. I think I've been here at Tomoka for 9 years now. I've been there 9 years. I said, no, I think I'm going to stay here. He said, come on, man, go, man. He said, I think it's God wanting you to go. And he wasn't even into the Bible or nothing. And this just told me that. He said, I think it's God wanting you to go. And I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah. Because he had seen the changes that were starting to, he had seen me had stopped cussing. One day I called him a butthole instead of an a-hole. And he's like, oh, now you call me a butthole instead of an a-hole? You're really changing. That's what I'll never forget that. He's dead now, but he told me that. And so he left. He said, all right, last chance. I'll never forget, he had all of his stuff in a laundry bag and he was headed out the door. He said, all right, last chance. And he went out the door and I laid there on the bed and I thought about it. And then I thought about it and I thought about it. So I said, let me go see what this clown's doing. I went up there and I looked out the window, and sure enough, he's walking down the sidewalk, headed up towards Sallyport Gate, turns left and goes into the Sallyport where the lieutenant's office and all that's up there. And I don't know what it is. Something just said, just like took over my thought life. And it's just automatically, I just said, okay, I'll go. I just rolled up all my stuff, my laundry, everything, and put it all in one bag. I see he did all his neat. I just put everything I had in one bag. And he had all kind of stuff. He had like 4 bags on his back. I only had 1 bag. So here I go, and I'm walking. And as I go to walking, everybody that know me is like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to Polk. And they started laughing at me. Yeah, right. Man, you know how long the waiting list is? People have been trying to get to Polk for years on a waiting list, because Polk Correctional was a good, for people with good behavior adjustment transfers. It was one of the better prisons to get to, and there was lots of people trying to get there because there was, I found out later, but there was lots of programs, and it wasn't controlled movement. You could move around freely, and they had all kinds of Christian programs, and you could play softball, and all kinds of good things, right? Instead of this locked down all the time. So, and they started laughing at me. Man, you're an idiot. Man, somebody, I remember today somebody told me they fixed to put him in a psych cell. That's where he's going. Because I'm just walking down the compound telling people I'm going to Polk CI. No transfer or nothing. No, nothing. And they was like, man, he's lost his mind. So I just kept following him. I walked up there, and I got up there, and the gate popped. It went, ding. So I walked through it. And the sergeant walked out there and he said, Bowden, he said, Mr. Mormon said that you're going with him. I said, well, what's going on? I didn't have no idea what was going on. And he said, well, if you don't know what's going on, then I don't know what's going on. And if I don't know what's going on, I can't tell you what's going on. Only thing I know is to tell you that you can go.
Wow.
So I said, all right. So he said, well, turn around, put your stuff down. He said, turn around, cuff up. So I put my stuff down, turn around, cuffed up. And he said, pick that stuff up. So I had to reach down and pick it up while I'm handcuffed. So I got it. And I walk, and he goes around, he takes me in there, and he puts me in the cell with this same guy that I was telling y'all about. His name was James Beavers. And, well, sure enough, they took us from there, and they took us and put us in confinement. Well, when we get in confinement, he finally tells me what it's about. He was doing some kind of deal with a correctional officer, and it went bad. And he told on the correctional officer and got the correctional officer fired so he could get a transfer to Polk. And so he just decided to let me hitchhike with him. And I found out later, I know now, that it was God doing it all along. Even his transfer didn't have nothing to do with him. Probably it was because God was trying to get me to Polk. So they put us in confinement for the night. Next thing you know, they put me on the bottom, him on the top with a motor him. I hit the thing, and I said, man, if we ain't going to Polk, man, you got a serious problem. I said, more I think about this here, man, this is getting... He said, relax, Johnny, we're going to Polk, I promise you. It's like, so I'm laying down there, and this is like the 3rd time I ever prayed in my life, and I said, Lord, please explain to me what's going on. I don't understand anything's going on right now at all. And I didn't get no answer or nothing. I fell asleep. The next thing you know, they banging the handcuffs on the bars. Because we're in the cell with the bars. They're banging it. And he calls my name, Bowden, Beaver, pack it up. I'm like, yeah. Okay, no problem. So but he hollers, well, we don't get to eat breakfast first? So the guy said, yeah, we got y'all's trays down here. And so I said, me, still, where are we going? He said, I don't know, and if I did know, I can't tell you. I was like, for real, man. So anyhow, so we get out there, James goes, I told you we're going to Polk. So I myself personally had heard about Polk, about how good it was for years, you know. And that was one of the reasons that I was curious to know if I was really going there or not. I didn't know at this time that it was God trying to get me there for a bigger purpose. So sure enough, when they get ready to put us on the van, I asked him, I said, where are we going? He said, I can't tell you, but he turned my jacket, and on the back of it, it was wrote in black marker, Polk CI. And I was like, okay, going to Polk. So when we get to Polk CI, they back us into Sallyport, which is a gate where they back the van in, and they lock one gate, and the other gate's locked. Then they let you out. Then they open this gate and let you in, then they lock the gate back, and then you're in the compound. So it's crazy. It's like a bird trap or some kind of rabbit trap, if anybody don't know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, so.
You're fine. Is anybody in a big hurry to leave? How much more you got?
Not long.
30.
5 minutes.
Okay. Everybody give it another 5-10 minutes?
Okay. I didn't know I was going that long. I'm almost over with. Anyhow, so we get to Polk CI, and the woman, I put the woman on my business list, and she starts coming to see me. And then next thing you know, she says I got a daughter, and so I get to Polk and I get baptized. I meet the pastor that's a part of this church, is Pastor Blevins. Brother Blevins is there. He's coming in there. He comes in there and he baptizes me, and I start speaking in tongues. I get baptized in the Holy Ghost. And so, anyhow, next thing you know, the woman starts coming to see me every weekend, and then she tells me, I got a daughter I want you to meet. And there she is right over there. And I said, oh yeah? She said, yeah, she just went through a bad relationship, and she's got a brain tumor in her head, and she needs somebody to talk to her. She needs a friend. So anyhow, now I gotta wrap it up.
Tell the miracle,
I met her, and she started coming to see me, and I got out, and we came here, and we got married right over there somewhere. The church used to be this way. We got married right over there. And then she had to have a tumor removed out of her head because she had cholesteatoma, big tumor, in 2012. Well, they found out that she had another tumor growing. So one day we're sitting in our, well anyhow, we got our home through this church too. There was a guy who used to come here, and he introduced us to the guy that we bought our home from. So we got our home out of this church too. So anyhow, we still got our home. Thank you, Lord. Anyhow, one day they tell her that the tumor's growing back in her head, and God tells me, He says, look, just ask her, can she have a greater faith to believe? And I just asked her, and she said, yeah. And He said, go lay hands on her and cast it out. Cast that cholesteatoma out in my name. And by this time I was well Bible versed and knowing everything by then, but I'd been studying the Bible all them years. And like 3-4 years. And so sure enough, laid hands on her. Well, when I laid hands on her, I believed it, but the devil kept coming back to her trying to steal it from her. And she kept saying, well, I hear her on the phone, I got a tumor in my head. And I say, no, you don't. And she'd say it, and I'd say, no, you don't. So finally, 1.5 years goes by, and we go, they got to do an MRI, and we got to go all the way to the Tampa General Hospital. And finally, we get in there to her doctor after the MRI, and he looks on the screen and says, your husband's right. There is no tumor. You are well. Okay, now that's her miracle, and I'm going to tell you my miracle. Well, whenever I was doing the drugs, I had caught a virus called hepatitis C. And what happened was, down through years from having it so long, I didn't even know I had it. It had deteriorated my liver, autoimmune. My immune system was literally killing my liver. And just here, I don't know, all last year, I was so sick that my belly was swollen like this here. I couldn't poop, couldn't eat. And she'll tell you, I was walking around the house, moaning, whining, crying all day long, going in the hospital once a week. Finally, they did test work on me and everything, and they sent me over to do an upper GI and a lower GI, and they said, you got cirrhosis of the liver, stage 2, you got less than 2 years to live, you got chronic gastritis, and it's not going to go away. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is give you some pain pills and tell you to get on a diet. That's one thing they said. So I had already done repented, I was already living back for God. I just hadn't just started coming back to church again. And one day, I started thinking about church all the time. And one day I just opened up the Bible like it always used to, and it just opened it up and it flipped right there. And I was sick, bad. And it said right there in James, go to the church and let the elders lay hands on you and anoint you with oil, and the Lord will heal you and raise you up. And I said, I told her and her mom, I said, because they was both sick, or her mom had got cancer, and she had to stay with her mom. And I said, I was so sick I could barely drive here. I said, she said, you really going? I said, I got to go. I'm going to obey God. I'm going to go get my healing. And I came and I drove, barely made it here. And I was so sick when I got here. And I just was bad sick. I was in so much pain. When I got here, I couldn't wait to get up here. And the pastor laid hands on me, anointed me, and just joined up and everything. And that same feeling I had when I had in that bed that night, that warm, fuzzy feeling, I felt it on my head. And I said, there it is, Pastor, I feel it, I feel it. And when I left, I ain't been sick since, y'all. That's the end of my testimony. And I'm back in church again. But I ain't got nothing wrong with me. I poop perfect, I can eat anything. Back then, I couldn't eat nothing, couldn't drink nothing, couldn't sleep, miserable, up, down in the hospital, belly like this. My liver enzymes, everything was off whack, crazy. But look at me now, healthy as I can be. And he healed me for a purpose. I hope somebody gets something out of it. I'm sorry I took so long, but I hope somebody gets something out of that. I mean, it was just straight out of my heart. And I can look back now and I just give all the glory to God and the best man that I ever met right here, other than the Lord. Give it over to you, Pastor.
And you say, I can't make it. One thing you left out, I won't add. I got a little bit louder mouth than he's got. Praise God, praise God.
Yeah, it takes you long.
While he was, no, you done good, Robert. While he was still in there, only thing he had left was his home place. His dad had died, his mom had died. He received a phone call
Oh, yeah.
where his grandmother told him,
Yeah.
John said, I had to sell the home place.
Yeah.
Your grandpa made me.
Yeah, I lost
So
my
here
memory.
he said, what are you talking about? He said, I've lost everybody. I'm in this place and I've got nothing. Now you're telling me that I don't even have a place to come back to? And if you think for a minute that you're going through some things that you can't go through, I pray you'll take this testimony
Yes.
and say, I can make it.
Hallelujah, Lord.
It didn't take a preacher just pounding it in his head. He just allowed God to lead.
Yes.
And God strengthened him through every bit of this. And he just hit some highlights. But God's sufficient. And he's able. Before we close, these altars are open. If anybody wants to come pray, you're welcome to come pray. But I appreciate him tonight. He sat there and he told me his testimony and about a week or so ago, and man, I stayed up all night long. Got up the next morning, and I finally called him. And I said, brother, you got to share that with the church.
I wasn't thinking about it.
And he finally decided we would, and I can't wait to see where this is going to go with God. This is just the beginning. Brother John, I appreciate it. Sister Joy,
Yes.
God is really working in their homes. And I'm going to say this. He didn't come up here for a dime. But if any, to get to church tonight, Sister Donnie was going to go get them and take them back home. Well, he got out in his truck he's got out there, and he hot-wired the lights back on it. And he had done that earlier, and the tail lights wouldn't work. But he said, I'm going to drive it anyway. Well, when he got his lights hooked up and started the church, the dash lights and all come on. Everything started working. Come to find out, the tail lights all went to work. Even the tag lights.
That's right.
But if you feel it in your heart, and if you got anything that you want to slip him when you shake his hand, feel free to.
No, I'm good.
I know that. I know you would.
No, I'm good.
But God's got so much in store for him and her. And you think, well, I got to be all this and I got to be all that to get healed. You don't have to be all that to get healed. Brother Leonard, God can touch that heart, even yet tonight. But you got to make up your mind that you allow him to.
Hurt your soul too, if you let him.
Without a doubt.
Hurt your soul if you let him, but we got to let him. Yes,
I don't want to embarrass you. Mind me come back there and praying for you. And then we'll close, I guess. I don't think he minds me saying this. Took him to the hospital last night. Having a lot of problems. Run a test on him. Come to find out he'd had a heart attack. But he went to stay in the hospital. He signed himself out. But he's in the church house today.
Amen. Hallelujah.
And how many believe God's able? Come here, brother John.